Hey guys, I'm Katie Room from Periapsis Press. Today, I'm going to talk about an article that was published on The Blaze just a few days ago, I think on the 8th, by somebody I follow on Twitter, the Middle Earth Mixer, who is a great follow, and I definitely recommend checking him out on Twitter for sure. And I'm not going to be criticizing at all his understanding of Tolkien. So, but I think there's some interesting things to talk about from my perspective, particularly as it relates to sci-fi fantasy and indies and conning. But first, I am going to do my normal start to the signal, which is to talk indie news and then to talk about a recent or upcoming review. Today it will be a recent review. I'm still reading for my next one yet. Hi to The Ultimate Kahuna and Michael F. Kane and Timo Burnham and A.S. Brunette. Brunert. I'll get this sooner or later. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate you. All right. So my only real news right now is everybody's news, right? Which is that the big BasedCon based book sale is going on right now. And this is my article on it. Obviously, there are links to the actual article in it. It's hosted by Hans G. Schantz. And what I do here is I just grab the ones that I have already reviewed. There are obviously other really good ones on there. And if something interests you, you should grab it. The sale goes through tomorrow. So these are books that I've reviewed that are part of it. TJ Marquis is the Demibus that's on sale. I don't think How Black This Guy and Out of the Deep are on sale individually, but I know that the Demibus is. So the only thing that isn't on here that I have reviewed is Deathbringer by Blake Carpenter, which I reviewed in the first issue of Anvil. That review will be coming to my website soon. But Anvil had exclusivity for a while. So definitely, I believe that the Anvil issue 2 Indiegogo is still ongoing. So if you haven't had a chance, you can, I believe, still pick up Anvil issue 1 with issue 2 through that. So I highly encourage that. My recent review is for the Twisted Realm novellas by Amy Sutphin. I did these as a group. It's not a complete series, but it's a complete arc, the first 3 novellas in this series. I really appreciated the format. I think I say later, like at one point in my review, it was just like eating chips, right? It was just, oh, I read the first one and it didn't take too long and it was really fun. I'll grab the next one. And then you read that one and you just keep grabbing them and you don't even think about it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really appreciated the second one in particular, which was much more magic school. I thought that the first one had kind of a magic school vibe to it. And I felt that prior to the reveal that they would be going to an academy, right? Like, it was particularly the themes of friendship among peers that I saw developing, but that was quite satisfying to have pay out in the way that made sense. And I really liked the treatment of parents. And I won't go any deeper into this. You guys can read my whole review right now. It's linked below. Yeah, This is supposed to be just a snapshot review. Okay. Hi to TJ Lombardi and Matthew Pilgrim. And guys are all just greeting each other in the chat. And I'm like, wait, I've already said hi to you. I could say hi to you all again, I suppose. I don't. Oh, thank you, Timo. I really appreciate that. I wasn't sure how to get in contact with her. I have a primitive Instagram account, which I have been trying to do a little bit more with. And that's how I tagged her, which is like maybe like that's not fully reaching out. So I wasn't sure if that was going to be sufficient, but she seems like she's a little more active on there than I am. So I'm glad that that she did see it. I would love to hear what she thought. I really like to hear what authors think about my thematic takeaways. I'm always interested to know if you guys do things on purpose for me to discover, or if I'm just gleaning things that fell by the wayside as you were creating something fun. Oh, nice. Okay, David is on a call right now, so hopefully I won't blast through all of the content that I've prepared for you guys before he's done with that. After this, there's the potential still. He did say that he would build Legos with me. So there's that potential to do, depending on how long this takes and how long his call takes. Yeah, Instagram, it's not... Because of the emphasis on images, it's much, much more difficult for indie authors who do not have additional visual content and consistent, or who are and indie authors who are not consistently seeking out to make visual content. David's Instagram is amazing, right? Because he's always taking screenshots of his project with spaceships and planets, and he put in a moon recently. I don't know if you guys saw, he did like there's this tunnel. It's actually in the fountain mechanism, or a tunnel like it is in the fountain mechanism. This one, the image that he made has spaceships flying into it. So, and it's just awesome, really cool stuff. But you have to be actively creating visual things for people to see, because it's pictures instead of writing, which is obviously what indie authors are investing their time and energy into. Yeah. David and I feel that part of what we're trying to work towards is having a visual brand in addition to like the actual like book part, right? So we've been playing with different ways of doing that and trying to figure things out in such a way that we can build that out. Part of that is probably going to be investing in art sooner or later, once I have a clear vision of what it is I want. But we'll see. Okay. So I linked the article that I'll be discussing below if you guys would like to look at it yourselves. Otherwise, I'll have it up here. So this is from the Blaze and by Middle Earth Mixer. Commentary. The downfall. Doggone it, go away. I don't want you. I don't want you around. Just go away. Okay, the downfall, Tolkien's warning against a corrupted empire and what the American right can learn from it. I thought this was a really interesting article, and like I said, I'm not going to be challenging him on his understanding of Tolkien. Largely what the article is an object lesson using the Fall of Numenor as a, like, hey, we need to change course in our American trajectory. And particularly, Middle Earth Mixer tries to make a call to action for the conservative movement to be maybe more stalwart in their defense of our values. And I'm just going to pick at it a little bit. So you guys can tell me if I'm being overly critical. I thought this sentence here was interesting. The American right needs a revival of ideological vision to inspire young people into seeing the beauty of universal truth in our foundational values again. I read that and I think, yes, absolutely. Yes. And I have a concrete way that I believe that we should go about that, right? I think this is interesting because this is an assertion, but this isn't the argument that he makes in the end, which I think is too bad, because I think the Blaze could listen to that. Instead, well, you guys will see. He goes in kind of a well-trodden direction. So obviously, I think that a revival of ideological vision to inspire, particularly referencing beauty, universal truth, and our values, right? I'm like, yes, books, right? Obviously, our cultural efforts in this goal should be art. And what he does next made me go, oh, he's going this direction, right? Oh, my whole screen went dark. I don't know if you guys saw that. Like, I flipped out. Okay. Enter Oxford professor and modern myth maker J.R. Tolkien. In Tolkien's essay on fairy stories, he uses an analogy of a smudged window to describe a person's view of universal truth. Man by nature can occasionally take the beauty of faith, family, and duty for granted. His view of beauty can become blurred, his window smudged. Tolkien argues that fantasy stories can be a strong tool for removing the smudge from your window to bring back into view the light and majesty of truth. Yes, absolutely. Right. Perfect. Well said. Unfortunately, this whole paragraph appears to be a defense of his then proceeding to use the Fall of Numenor as an object lesson for politics. I was so bummed out. But he's right. This is published on the Blaze, right? So, like, you can't just trot out a fantastic story and say, we need to learn a lesson from this, right? You have to defend even the right to do that. It's so stupid. But, like, from my point of view, this is clearly saying fantasy is what is going to help us in the revival of ideological vision, right? See the beauty of universal truth, right? Oh. But that's not the direction he goes at all, and I was kind of bummed out by that. I think I think that the conservative movement in America is too preoccupied with not saying the wrong thing that they can't and like being grown up and um, being taken seriously, that they can't even listen to an argument from a fantasy story without this framework being built for them. And I think that's a real bummer, because this should be way, way more than a framework, in my opinion. Oh, come on. Okay. Tolkien used his fictional stories to convey universal and religious truths about how we should live, and the American right should take a few notes from them. Yes. Indies. Support indies who do the same thing as Tolkien. There really is a Tolkien lesson for everything. Yes. Yes, there is. And then we proceed into the Tolkien lesson. So he specifically talks about the Fall of Numenor. He really goes into a lot of the ways that Numenor crumbled, leading up to the final sinking. The story of Numenor is a rich warning from Tolkien on what happens when rot and corruption begin to poison a nation and the hearts of its people. My only quibble with this would be that it's not really a warning. It's more of a story of like, because there's not really it's more of a trajectory, right? You can match the trajectory to what we're seeing in our country today. But it's not really a warning, because Tolkien is not providing like at any point an alternative direction that the country could have gone in. A lot of the points are like comparable to things that we are seeing in our world today. People being locked up for what they believe, persecuted, lies being promoted, our holidays, and both national and religious being either replaced or shunned. These are things that he brings up, right? So they're definitely like, Tolkien is telling a story about the fall of an empire. So it shouldn't be surprising that those things, that those similarities exist. But the good guys fled to Middle Earth, right? In the end, right? That's how Aragorn's line continued. And I'm not sure that you can really make the argument that the whole thing could have been avoided if good people had just stood up. Because by the time people were standing up, they were being locked up, right? So at what point earlier did that have to occur in order to stave off the entire crumbling of the whole of Numenor, right? I'm gonna catch up on your guys's comments. Hi, Crate Spain. Thank you for coming. And Pinkava, thank you. Thank you. That made me chuckle. Hot local elves. Yeah. The Fall of Numenor takes place while things are crumbling. The Lord of the Rings takes place sort of after, and the Golden Age has passed. The Golden Age is a giant fantasy myth, right? So it's definitely, you can see similarities between one thing falling apart and another thing falling apart. That's not difficult, but I think it's more of a leap to say, okay, here's how we avoid that fate. Yeah. Yep. Identifying themes within a work doesn't mean that the work as such is some kind of parable with a particular lesson in mind. Yep, I agree. And it's completely fair to say Tolkien didn't intend this to be a lesson, but we can extrapolate something from it. I don't know that we can necessarily extrapolate a specific call to action, but I think it certainly is kind of a downer, right? To a kind of a ominous analogy. Michael Caine says, broadly, I think Mixer's point is fine, to be honest. He makes comparisons about societal decay and the decay of an empire. It's not really an actionable thing because that wasn't what Tolkien was writing. Exactly. Yep. I'm going to take you guys back. I'm just skipping all of his actual, like, laying side by side the things that are happening in our world and the things that happen in Numenor. This was an interesting question. He posited, what fills the void when you can no longer celebrate the sacred? I think obviously like if you're talking from a cultural, like if you're arguing that we as a culture must collectively celebrate the sacred, that's something a bit different than individual people continuing to do what they've always done, get together, during holidays and celebrate. It's easy online, right, to be like, oh, everything's falling apart, or watching the news, right, and be like, our cultural heritage is being erased, when our cultural heritage continues to be, in the case of like celebrating, performed, right? We still get together, we still do the things that we do on the 4th of July, on during Christmas, for example, right? So we are not to the point where we're not allowed to celebrate the sacred. We're not at that point yet. It's certainly an interesting question, and one, again, that I would link back to cultural artifacts like books, and other art forms, right? As a significant part of shoring up that front against the void, right? um, then he continues to talk about Numenor, and American faces a similar threat. Okay, this is the end, and this is where I found the clearest contrast to the beginning of the article. Tolkien, a passionate man of faith, took real-world moral struggles and interwove them with his fantasy stories. The American right can learn from the failure of the faithful men of Numenor, who were unable to turn the tide of subversion that plagued their country. Blah, blah, blah. Americans need a revitalization of faith, family, and service to community again. Individuals must be willing to stand in the gap and say no to the Saurons of the world. Blah, blah, blah. If we stand firm in preserving our beliefs and holding true to objective morality, we can define a better path forward for the conservative movement. So this statement does not reflect the statement at the beginning, which was the American right needs a revival of ideological vision to inspire young people into seeing the beauty of universal truth and our foundational values again. It's got some similar words in it, right? It glosses over that what would inspire that revitalization, right? Which in the beginning, Mill-Earth Mixer says the I shouldn't say he says. He follows his statement of inspiring revitalization with Tolkien's talk about fantasy and how fantasy reveals truth, right? Truth that we in our day-to-day lives begin to take for granted. So I agree with the statement, right? We need a revitalization. But I guess faith, family, and service to community is a much parsed down statement from the broader vision to inspire, coupled with specifically to inspire the like seeing why faith, family, and service to community are beautiful and important and true. If that makes sense, it's kind of a subtle difference, I guess. I really think that the solution isn't necessarily this kind of it's kind of a write-off call to action, right? Stand firm. It's the kind of thing the Blaze likes, right? Stand firm. Hold the line. It it's very vague too. Like, what does that look like? Are we supposed to be like the left and confront our coworkers, right, about stuff? Like the left is constantly telling young people, when your friends make a racist joke, call them out on it, right? Do we need to do that kind of stuff on but like the opposite, right? Do we need to call out people when they're being Marxist or something, right? Do we need to make them feel uncomfortable being themselves, um, or whatever? Do we need to homeschool our children? Do we need to, participate in active rebellion against the government, right? Like, like what is the actual holding the line? What does that look like? Um, and how would those things inspire people to see the beauty of universal truths? I think that kind of along the same lines of, um, let children read stories of heroes defeating dragons. Stories can greatly increase the impact of good people standing up to injustice, right? So you just digging in your feet, I don't know that that's necessarily inspiring unless people have read stories about things like that, right? Unless they have a touch point for that kind of behavior. Stories are universal, so people are always going to have a context for things. But it's far more important, in my opinion, obviously. But I think I'm not far off base when I suggest that Tolkien would agree that stories and creating stories to help, not to help, but to creating stories that tap into that universal truths, stories that reveal truth through the telling, through the entertainment, right, are much more important to a cultural movement that wishes to inspire people and to um, uh, give to them a sense of why we feel that faith, family, and community are so important. I think stories are the biggest part of that. Okay, I'm going to check back in with you guys. Michael Caine says, for me, I was glad to see the article, if only for the broader public to get a chance to think about some things that only a few of us Tolkien nerds have really been exposed to. True. The Fall of Numenor is a little more obscure for the general public. The Ultimate Kahuna says, I'm sure Tolkien would hate us comparing his writing to the modern world looking for answers. I don't know. Like he wouldn't want it to be an analogy because he hated an analogy. But I think the idea that he is writing about things that matter in the real world wouldn't surprise him or be objectionable to him. Hi, Patrick. Yeah, it would probably depend on how it was framed. If it was Tolkien, we read this and it made us think about these things, about how societies always go a certain direction. I'm not sure he'd mind. I don't think anything broke in that. I tracked with it. uh, I agree. Tolkien was obviously writing in favor of my preferred political positions. Actually, I have a book to defend that now. Where is it? I need to catalog things, put them in order rather than just. Where is it? I gotta find that. Didn't I just get a book? Something like I wonder what I did with it. This is gonna drive me nuts. Tolkien. The Hobbit Party. That's what it was. Where did I put it? The Hobbit Party. There it is. It's huge, large as life. Not huge, but it's bigger than a lot of them. The vision of freedom that Tolkien got and the West forgot. Yeah. Chapter 1. In a hole in the ground, there lived an enemy of big government. Yes. My preferred political positions. I really need to actually read that, not just be like, I have this book. Yeah. Yep. Anne says, Tolkien was writing a history. It makes sense that he would have written his history to echo what really happens at the end of Great Ages. I mean, yeah, it's a bummer. Yeah. Yep. Glad a lot of people are exposed to more of Tolkien's writing and the truth it contains. Yeah, absolutely. Why would you even voice this? You trying to curse us? Hard yes to homeschooling. Yes, but you'll never hear anybody say that except, I mean, like anybody with a platform, right? Because they don't want to get the people who are like, there would be a large backlash, right? From people who are like, well, I want to, but I can't. Or it's not fit for everybody, and homeschoolers are stupid, and right. So they don't want that. So nobody will say that. I would have a lot more respect for them if they did. Right. Exactly. Doing the good work, Michael. Yeah. Yep. I would suggest that stories are a link in the process, but are early. Sorry, this is Michael Caine again. People's imaginations need to be prepared for when the time comes they can act in the real world. Yes. The idea that heroes can stand up to dragons, right? The reason that we tell stories with dragons in them, but also heroes, is because later in life, you're going to run into problems. Maybe as dramatic as dragons. And to be able to then take on the archetype yourself, right, is not something you could do if you hadn't read that kind of a story. Star Wars broke me. Yeah, but which character is his Jesus again? The lion. Yeah. Yeah. And says, you're right. Stories are an important way we communicate ideas to each other, even in the Bible. Sometimes it helps to see a current problem in a different context to see clearly. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that imaginative fiction appeals so much to the imagination is because the dragon can be symbolic of more than a dragon, right? With a more realistic quote unquote story, the extended symbolism is a little narrower, I think. Imaginative fiction existed long before realistic fiction. So I feel justified in saying that that's by design, right? Don't tread on me, George Washington Proudfoot. Very nice. Okay. I think that was all that I had to say about this particular article. What I'm going to do now is wrap this up and then go get David, see where he's at, and then start a separate chill stream. Yes, it's probably not going to be a super long one, but I want to build Legos. And part of the reason that I'm going to do it as a separate video is because I need to like really rearrange my setup in order to make it work. Celtic mythology. Yikes. I don't get any monetization. So if you're getting ads, it's not paying me. And why wouldn't you just get YouTube Red? Because then you wouldn't have to watch ads at all. I went through a phase. I think it was during the last election where I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I think that's when I dropped the anime network. It's like I completely rejected it now. But I was so done. I was like, I can't deal with this. I am not a boomer, and you are not selling to me your BS, right? I couldn't even. Exactly. I couldn't even. Well said. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys listening to me ramble about my thoughts on an article that I didn't really even disagree with. I just what I really wanted was someone to say, you should be reading sci-fi and fantasy, right? But that didn't happen. So thank you guys so much for coming, and check out PureAccessPress.com, where I do long form, browsable, positive only reviews of indie sci-fi and fantasy. There, how's that for a show? Oh, and like and subscribe. There, wow, I'm really hitting all of the shameless self-promo stuff. You guys have a great night, and stick around for Lego building. I really appreciate you guys. Have a good one.